Strange rules at my hospital. Breaking them means death. The warning. The first time I saw the rules, I thought it was a joke. Hospitals have rules, of course. No smoking, no outside food, no unnecessary noise. But these were different. I had just started my night shift at St. Augustine Hospital, a facility known for its eerily quiet corridors and history of unexplained disappearances. The job offer had come out of nowhere, an email congratulating me on securing the position as a night nurse. I didn't recall applying, but I needed the money, and beggars can't be choosers. My first night was uneventful, just routine rounds, checking on the few patients we had. But on my second night, a manila folder sat on the desk in the break room, labeled in bold black letters. Rules for night staff. Follow them or die. I chuckled, thinking it was some hazing ritual for new employees. But when I opened the folder, the list inside made my stomach twist. 1. If you hear footsteps behind you in the east wing, do not turn around. Keep walking. 2. The patient in room 209 is not real. Do not enter. 3. If the intercom crackles between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., do not acknowledge it. No matter what you hear, do not respond. 4. If a doctor you don't recognize asks you to assist with surgery, refuse. No matter how insistent they are. 5. The janitor only cleans the west wing. If you see him anywhere else, avoid eye contact and walk away. 6. Never take the elevator at 3:33 a.m. If you do, you won't come back the same. 7. If a patient insists they don't belong here, alert security immediately. If you hear someone whisper your name from an empty room, keep walking. It's not who you think it is. 9. If a visitor asks about a patient that doesn't exist, direct them to the front desk and leave immediately. 10. Under no circumstances should you ever stay past your shift. If you do, you will see the morning doctor. You do not want to see the morning doctor. I read the list 3 times, the words weighing heavier with each pass. The fluorescent light above flickered, and I felt an unexpected chill creep up my spine. This isn't funny, I muttered, looking around for a hidden camera, expecting a coworker to jump out and laugh. But the break room was empty. I shook off the unease and pocketed the list. It was probably just a prank, a way to scare new hires. Still, a small part of me whispered, what if it's not? The first rule is tested. The night passed quietly until my rounds took me to the east wing. It was nearly 1 a.m., and the halls were dim, the overhead lights casting eerie shadows. I was halfway through checking on a sleeping patient when I heard it. Footsteps. Not the soft shuffle of slippers, nor the sturdy stomp of a security guard. These were deliberate, slow, and heavy. They echoed down the corridor, growing closer. I froze, my pulse hammering. Do not turn around. Keep walking. My grip on the clipboard tightened. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, to confirm I wasn't imagining it. But something deep inside told me, you don't want to see what's there. I forced my feet forward, my breath shallow. The footsteps continued, matching my pace. Closer, closer. Then silence. I turned the corner, my heart in my throat. The hallway was empty. Had I imagined it? Or had something been there, waiting for me to break the rule? I didn't linger to find out. Room 209. By 2:30 a.m., I had almost convinced myself the footsteps were just nerves. That was until I passed room 209. The door stood slightly ajar, light spilling from within. I checked my list again. The patient in room 209 is not real. Do not enter. A chill ran down my spine. Hospitals had odd superstitions, but this felt wrong. The logical part of my brain argued that someone had simply left the light on. Maybe another nurse had forgotten to close the door. Still, I didn't enter. I reached for my radio, intending to call security, when I heard it. Whisper. Not just any whisper, my name. Emily, come in. My blood turned to ice. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. Then the door creaked open wider. Figure stood inside. It wasn't human. Its face was blurred like a smudged painting, and its body was wrapped in a patient's gown, though the limbs were too long, too thin. It tilted its head, as if studying me. Ran. My heart pounded as I sprinted down the hall, my mind screaming in terror. Behind me I heard something move, a sound like wet fabric sliding across tile. I didn't stop until I reached the nurse's station, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I gripped the counter, trying to steady my breathing. The hallway was silent again. The intercom. At 2:55 a.m. the intercom crackled. A voice, distorted and staticky, whispered through the speakers. "Emily, come back. We just want to talk." I clapped my hands over my ears. The rule: do not acknowledge it, no matter what you hear. The voice changed. It wasn't static anymore. It was my mother's voice. "Sweetheart, why are you ignoring me?" Tears pricked my eyes. My mother had died 3 years ago. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to focus on the ticking clock. The rule was clear. The intercom went silent. Then, in a voice identical to mine, it whispered, "I see you." The lights flickered. And then the clock struck 3 a.m. Strange rules at my hospital. Breaking them means death. Part 2. The morning doctor is watching. I didn't sleep when my shift ended. The moment the sun rose, I grabbed my things and left St. Augustine Hospital without so much as a goodbye to my coworkers. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I drove home, my mind racing with questions I didn't want answered. The footsteps. The thing in room 209. The voice on the intercom mimicking me. It wasn't just a prank. The rules were real. I spent the entire day in a haze, unable to shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something wrong. By nightfall, dread curled around my stomach like a vice. I didn't want to go back. But I needed this job. And something inside me whispered, if you don't go back, something worse will come for you. A warning from the janitor. By the time I arrived for my shift, the hospital felt different. I had never noticed how wrong the air smelled before, a mix of antiseptic and something rotting beneath the surface. I had just set my things down when I saw him, the janitor. He was an older man, gray hair tucked under his cap, uniform stiff and clean. He was mopping the hallway outside the break room, his eyes darting nervously toward me. I remembered the rule. The janitor only cleans the West Wing. If you see him anywhere else, avoid eye contact and walk away. But before I could leave, he spoke. You read the rules, didn't you? I hesitated. Lion, walk away. But instead I nodded. The janitor exhaled sharply. He glanced around as if checking for someone or something. You've already broken one, haven't you? His voice was barely a whisper. My mouth went dry. Room 209, I admitted. His grip on the mop tightened. Then you need to listen carefully, he said. You get one mistake. One. If you break another rule, the morning doctor will come for you. A chill slithered down my spine. Who is the morning doctor? Yes. The janitor swallowed hard. If you ever see him, it's already too late. Then he turned and walked away, mop squeaking against the floor. The elevator at 3:33 a.m. The first half of my shift passed without incident. But as the clock crept toward 3 a.m., unease settled in my bones. I couldn't stop thinking about what the janitor had said. One mistake. I checked the list again, as if rereading it would make me feel safer. Then, at exactly 3:32 a.m., my pager buzzed. Blue, 3rd floor. My stomach clenched. I was on the 2nd floor. The nearest stairwell was all the way down the hall, but the elevator was right in front of me. I checked the time. 3:32 a.m. Never take the elevator at 3:33 a.m. If you do, you won't come back the same. I hesitated. Have 30 seconds. It's fine. The pager buzzed again. Someone needed help. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors slid shut, I pressed the button for the third floor. The overhead light flickered, and a static-like hum filled the small space. Then the elevator stopped. The doors didn't open. I pressed the button again. Nothing. The digital display above me glitched, the numbers shifting wildly. 5 1 9. Then slowly it settled on -1. My breath hitched. The doors slid open. Something is down here. A hallway stretched before me, bathed in dim, flickering light. The walls weren't right. The paint peeled in long, curling strips, revealing something black and pulsing underneath. The air was thick, suffocating, and the scent of something foul burned my nose. I should have stayed in the elevator. But something moved at the end of the hallway. A shadowy figure stood there, motionless. Too tall, too thin. Then, slowly it took a step forward. My body screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Another step. I saw its face. Or rather, I saw my face. A grotesque, twisted version of me. The skin sagged unnaturally, the eyes hollow and sunken. Its mouth stretched into a too-wide grin, lips splitting at the corners. "You shouldn't have broken the rule," it whispered. I stumbled back, slamming my hand against the elevator button. The thing lunged. The doors slid shut just in time. The elevator shook violently, and for a horrifying moment, I thought the thing would rip through the doors. But then silence. The doors opened again. I was on the third floor. I stumbled out, gasping for breath. "The morning doctor is coming." I didn't remember how I got through the rest of my shift. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and I avoided looking at my reflection in any glass surface. When my shift finally ended, I grabbed my things and headed for the exit. Then, as I stepped into the parking lot, I heard it. Voice. "Emily." It was soft, almost sweet. I turned my head slowly. A man stood just outside the hospital doors, dressed in a pristine white coat. His face was wrong, uncanny. His features were too smooth, his eyes too bright, his smile too perfect. "Emily," he repeated, tilting his head. "It's time for your checkup." I turned and ran. The last thing I heard before I reached my car was his voice, still calm, still smiling. "You broke 2 rules. That means I'll be seeing you soon." Strange rules at my hospital. Breaking them means death. Part 3. You can't escape. I didn't sleep after my shift. I sat in my apartment, every light on, clutching the rule list like it was a lifeline. My brain kept replaying what had happened in the elevator, the thing that looked like me, the whisper, the morning doctor waiting outside. He said he would see me soon. I'd broken 2 rules. I couldn't afford to break another. But a terrible realization crept into my mind. What if following the rules isn't enough? A warning I shouldn't have ignored. By sunset, I had convinced myself I wasn't going back to St. Augustine Hospital. Quit. Find another job. Maybe leave the city entirely. But then the phone rang. My stomach twisted. The hospital's number flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. A voicemail notification popped up. I stared at it for a long time before pressing play. "Emily," the voice on the other end was eerily calm. Familiar. "You're late for your shift." My breath hitched. I wasn't scheduled tonight. "We'll be waiting," the voice continued. Then softer, almost a whisper. "You can't run from us." I dropped the phone. Something followed me home. I didn't return to the hospital, but that didn't mean I was safe. By 3 a.m. my apartment felt wrong. The air was thick, suffocating. The lights flickered. Then a knock at my door. Not loud, not demanding, just steady. I sat frozen, barely breathing. Then from outside, "Emily, open the door." My heart stopped. It was my own voice. "We just want to talk." I clenched my hands into fists. The rule. Do not acknowledge it. Then a whisper right behind me. "You already broke 2 rules. What's one more? Ran straight into my bedroom, slamming the door shut. But before I could lock it, the doorknob twisted. I pressed my back against the door, forcing it shut with every ounce of strength I had. The whisper came again, right against my ear, as if something was inside the room with me. You should have stayed for your shift. Then silence. I didn't move until the sun came up. The final warning. I called out of work that night. My hands shook as I sent the email, telling them I was quitting. I wasn't going back. But then, at exactly 6 p.m. I got a text. Unknown number. You're scheduled for tonight. Do not be late. I blocked the number. Seconds later, my TV turned on by itself. The screen flickered, static crackling. Then, a live feed of St. Augustine Hospital's 3rd floor. The hallways were empty. The lights buzzed. The camera slowly panned, until it settled on a figure standing at the end of the hall. Dressed in white. Smiling too wide. The morning doctor. Then, he turned to look directly at the camera. And in a voice I swear came from inside my apartment, he whispered, "It's time for your checkup." The screen cut to black. I was out the door before I even realized I was moving. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't lock the door behind me. I just ran. Because no matter what I did, I knew the morning doctor was already on his way. Strange rules at my hospital. Breaking them means death. Part 4. Nowhere is safe. I drove for hours. The city lights faded behind me, swallowed by endless highways and the empty darkness of the road. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I didn't have a plan. All I knew was that I needed to get as far away from St. Augustine Hospital as possible. Away from the footsteps, the whispers, the morning doctor. But deep inside I already knew the truth. I wasn't running from the hospital. I was running from something that had already found me. Something is following me. By the time I stopped at a roadside motel, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. The air outside was thick with humidity, the neon sign buzzing as I stepped into the lobby. The receptionist barely looked up as he handed me the key to room 12. "No guests after midnight," he muttered. "And if you hear knocking, don't open the door." I swallowed hard. "Why?" The receptionist finally met my gaze. His eyes were dull, tired. "Just don't." I nodded and took the key. The room was small, just a bed, a wooden dresser, and a TV that looked older than me. The bathroom mirror was cracked, and the air smelled faintly of bleach. I locked the door, bolted the windows, checked the closet twice. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself I was safe, I knew I wasn't alone. 3:33 a.m. I jolted awake to the sound of knocking. Low, rhythmic. I shot up in bed, my pulse hammering. "Emily." My stomach twisted. It was my voice. "We just need to check your vitals." I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to stay still. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. Then the doorknob twisted. I bit down on my lip, holding back a whimper. "Emily." The voice was right outside now, inches from me. "You can't run forever." The air in the room turned cold. My breath came out in shaky clouds. Then silence. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. But when I finally opened my eyes, the door was open, and someone was standing inside. The patient who doesn't exist. I couldn't move. The figure stood in the doorway, its face hidden in the shadows. But I recognized the hospital gown, the 4 scars along its arms. Room 209. The patient who wasn't real. "You broke the rules, Emily," it whispered. "Now we have to fix you." Its head snapped to the side at an unnatural angle. Then it lunged. I barely had time to react before the lights exploded, plunging the room into darkness. I scrambled back, my hands searching for anything anything to defend myself. But before I could move, hands wrapped around my throat. Cold, clammy, inhuman. The last thing I heard before the world went black was a voice. Too smooth, too perfect. You should have come back for your checkup. Strange rules at my hospital. Breaking them means death. Part 5, the final checkup. Darkness. I drifted in and out, weightless, trapped in a place that felt like neither life nor death. Voices whispered just beyond my reach. The grip around my throat was gone, but something else had taken hold. I wasn't in the motel anymore. I was back at St. Augustine Hospital. Waking up in hell. A steady beep, 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 pulled me from the void. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow. I was in a hospital bed, restraints tight around my wrists and ankles. My body ached. My throat burned. A shadow loomed over me. The morning doctor. His smile was too wide, his teeth too straight, too white. His fingers twitched at his sides, long and slender, almost surgical. You finally woke up, he said cheerfully, flipping through a clipboard. We were so worried about you, Emily. I thrashed against the restraints. Let me go. His head snapped at an unnatural angle. His grin never wavered. But you're not well, he said, voice dripping with mock concern. You ignored our rules. You tried to leave. That's a very serious condition. He set the clipboard down and leaned in. Luckily, I know just how to fix you. The procedure. The morning doctor pulled a tray closer, the sound of metal instruments scraping together making my stomach churn. Scissors, scalpel, a syringe filled with something dark. We just need to make a few adjustments, he murmured, selecting the scalpel with delicate precision. Panic surged through me. You're not real. This isn't real. His smile faltered. Then, for the first time, his voice turned cold. Who told you that? The room darkened. The walls breathed. The machines beeped erratically, glitching between normal hospital sounds and something distorted, wrong. The restraints tightened on their own. The morning doctor sighed. You're making this difficult, he mused, raising the scalpel. But don't worry. After this, you won't remember a thing. He pressed the blade to my skin. And then, the intercom crackled. Code blue. Morning doctor to room 209. His entire body stiffened. For the first time, the morning doctor looked afraid. The intercom crackled again. Code blue. Morning doctor to room 209. No, he whispered. Then, before my eyes, he began to glitch. His form flickered, distorting, as if he were a corrupted file in reality itself. The room around me shuddered. The air rippled. And then, the door burst open. The last rule. A figure stood in the doorway. The janitor. His face was pale. His uniform soaked in something dark. He didn't look at me. He only looked at the morning doctor. You weren't supposed to touch her, the janitor said quietly. The morning doctor twitched violently. His smile now twisted into something grotesque. She broke the rules, he hissed. The janitor stepped closer. And so did you. The lights exploded. A deafening scream filled the air. Not mine, not the janitor's, but the morning doctor's. His body contorted, shrinking, twisting, dissolving into static. The room collapsed inward, reality unraveling at the seams. And then, nothing. I should be dead. When I woke up, I was in the hospital parking lot. The sun was rising. My car keys were in my hand. The hospital stood behind me, quiet, normal. As if none of it had happened. But in my pocket I found something. The list of rules. One last line had been added at the bottom, written in shaking, unfamiliar handwriting. Rule number 13. If you survive the morning doctor, leave and never come back. If you do, we won't be able to save you next time. Got in my car. I didn't look back. And I never will. The end.